Hey everybody, welcome back to Bible Fun with the Duns. Today we've read 1 Kings chapter number 2 and Jackson's going to get us started.
Okay, so basically this was a pretty long chapter compared to what we're used to, like in 2 Peter and all that. So we have this story and it's basically telling us that towards the end of David's life they're trying to find somebody to take over after him. I forgot the smart word for that, but that's fine. Anyway, so we have Adonijah who's trying to be king, and then we have this other general, and what's his name? Joab. And so we have these two people who are basically trying to get power through bad, sneaky ways, and in the end, it doesn't end out good for them.
Good.
Yeah. But anyway, we also see Solomon, who is David's son. And he is the one who ends up becoming king in the end because he was patient and godly and wise. And what I really like about this also was the last verse. And it says, thus the kingdom was established in the hand of Solomon. So it's really important that we recognize the wording of that because it's not saying Solomon obtained it himself, because we see what happened to him. These people are trying to get power just from their own works. They die.
That's true.
But Solomon, because he was godly and wise, the Lord gave him this power because he knows he's going to be a good king. And so that's basically the chapter.
Yeah. I think one good thing to notice as you read through this, and this chapter is all about establishing Solomon as the king, fitting him into that role, and securing the kingdom. That the kingdom of Israel was not an object to be won. It was an inheritance that God was giving. And so in order to do this, here's kind of the politics of this. So you got these three guys that all end up dying in the story. The first one is Adonijah. Adonijah is King David's son. He's an older brother of Solomon. And in the previous chapter, he had kind of tried to take the kingdom not by force, but he was taking the kingdom by just pushing it as far as he could go to see what he could get. He kind of had the philosophy, the answer is always no unless you ask. And so he just was going to go on. Matter of fact, another motto for him would be, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. So he was just going to do his thing. Solomon was actually content to let his brother live after Solomon became king. The thing that really changed everything is Adonijah went to Solomon's mom and said, hey, would you ask the king to let me marry the girl Abishag, who was like David's nurse in his final days? What's interesting about that is, remember when Absalom tried to take the kingdom from David? The first thing he did was go in and marry David's other wives in the kingdom, because that was the way the kingdom was kind of passed. It was seen as one guy taking over for another guy. And so in the background of this story, Adonijah has tried to take the kingdom in chapter 1, but in chapter 2, since he still thinks he's got the support of some high-ranking officials, he's now trying to take the kingdom by being sneaky. Solomon sees through this, and Solomon has him executed. The next story is Joab. He was David's general throughout all. And Joab he's a complicated guy. Like, he was intensely loyal to David. But he looked out for number one, too. Like, he killed a lot of good people in order to retain power. One of the marks of like a dangerous person is what they're willing to do to keep their hands on control. And so you see when Solomon sends soldiers to go get him and judge him, he runs to the altar and he wraps his arms around the altar. And in Israelite days, the innocent were allowed to go grab the altar and like have a trial, but the guilty weren't. And everybody knew Joab was guilty, so there was no trial. There was just judgment, and he died. The next one was a guy who had been really mean to David and cursed the kingdom and the king when David was running from Absalom. This is a guy who just would not take no, like he would not submit. And Solomon even tried to help him. He's like, listen, as long as you live within the confines of these instructions, you'll be fine. But if you wander off, you've sealed your own fate. Well, listen, this was not the kind of guy that ever wanted to be told no. So he went out and he died too. I want you to understand, when you read through this, God's wheels of judgment grind and turn slowly. but he is a faithful judge, and he is going to make right what we have done wrong. The key to this chapter for me, though, is the very beginning. It says this, now the days of David drew near that he should die. You ought to pause there and consider this, that even a king, with all of his power and all of his fame and all of his success, even a king faces death. So we should be prepared for what happens after death. The last words of David to Solomon say this. He says, be strong and prove yourself a man, and keep the charge of the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes, his commandments, his judgments, his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that you may prosper. So David is thinking back to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 17, as he's given these last instructions. But his instruction to Solomon was, hey, Solomon, be a man. I want you to notice that this serving, this leading that Solomon was doing as he was becoming king, this obedience to God, this commitment, it was not something passive. To get these right, Solomon was going to have to be diligent and be faithful. As a matter of fact, there's a good rule here that really this defines for us what manliness is. Manliness is not strength. Joab had strength. Manliness was going to be faithfulness and obedience to the things of God. And let me tell you this. What makes a man is obedience to God the Father. And by the way, the lesson of all of this is basically that we are to be growing and maturing followers of God. We're supposed to, and listen, you could take this with, there's a difference in being a girl and being a woman. I'm just going off what David says here. In essence, David says, listen, you obey the Lord and you grow up to be a man of God. Because it's possible for somebody to age, a young man to age, but he not be a man. He's just a boy who's now able to shave. David says, as you grow, follow the Lord, obey the Lord, serve the Lord, honor the Lord. He said, be diligent to do these things, and this is how the Lord will confirm your steps. This is the establishment of the kingdom. And by the way, this is really important to the story of Israel. So we'll see you tomorrow in chapter number 3, and Solomon's going to get his wisdom. All right, see you then.
Bye.